One of the biggest reasons why I hate subjectivism is because subjective is just an intellectually lazy word. You can't really prove that a thing is arbitrary, and subjective essentially means arbitrary. I don't know why that's controversial. That's how most people use this word and implicitly define it. If you define subjective as based on or influenced by personal feelings, tastes, or opinions, then it's not anything outside of that. It's just something that you made up. The same is true if you define subjective as being mind-dependent, or its more classical distinction of the object of thought versus the thinking subject. Any way you define it, it is something someone made up, arbitrary. And the problem with that is if you put even the smallest amount of effort into investigating something, you're going to find that it's not arbitrary. Take, for example, something that people tend to hold as the epitome of a subjective thing, personal taste. There are reasons that I like the things I do. That doesn't just exist solely in my mind. I didn't just decide, I like lasagna. It is not always necessarily a choice made for me because I have some control over my own interests, but it's not arbitrary either. I have the opinions and tastes that I do because of my environment, my genetics, and the choices that I make. To say anything to the contrary, you would have to say, no, you like those things just because you do, and that's your personal opinion. And even assuming that's true, which we know it's not, how do you prove that? If there is a factual reason for why something is the way that it is, then it is not an opinion. If there is something external to either one of our minds that you can show me and say, this is why this is subjective, then it's not dependent on either one of our minds. If you can give me an object to think about, then it is the object of thought and not the thinking subject. You cannot prove that something is subjective because, one, you would have to prove that it is arbitrary, and once you can prove it, then you have a basis for its existence. And two, nothing is subjective. The only thing that's possibly subjective is like the experience of thinking itself, and only from the classical definition of subjectivism. Otherwise, when you say that something is subjective, you're just making an appeal from ignorance. You don't know or don't understand the basis for that thing, and so you're just calling it subjective, which isn't always a bad thing. For example, there are probably really complex reasons why languages exist as they do. The simplest example of this is that in pretty much every language, ma is either a nickname or the word for mother. And another example is that it is not my opinion that she sells seashells by the seashore is hard for us to say with our human physiology. But at the end of the day, it's not really reasonable from a dialectic or conversational approach to expect you to drop word salad every time you want to make a simple point. Well, a rose by any other name depends on its cultural and environmental factors over time as it evolves as a language, and based on human physiology, there are certain words, especially when we consider information theory, how much information a word conveys. No, a rose by any other name is just as sweet. Language is arbitrary to whether or not a rose is sweet. But notice what I just said there and keep that in mind when you claim that something is subjective. Arbitrary in relation to. When somebody says, hey, that moral opinion that you have is bad, hey, that movie you like is bad, you can't just reply, well, morality is subjective, taste is subjective. Because we're no longer talking about something that we accepted, we don't care to know the basis of. Somebody is now challenging the basis or merit of your beliefs, and you just respond with, well, these are my beliefs, so I believe them, as if that's an intelligent response.